interviewing very, very, very well, but not get a job offer? Has this ever happened to you before? In this video, I'm going to share with you three interview mistakes that will automatically kill your executive presence in an interview. The reason why this is important is because executive presence is something that you need to establish as a woman in leadership for any role that you're in, even in your interviews. So executive presence is not only for board meetings or meeting with stakeholders or business partners. It is for your everyday conversations. And in this video, we're going to talk a bit more about interviewing. So if this sounds like a topic that you would like to learn more about, then stay tuned to the entire video, because I'm going to share the third and most common interview mistake that people make that kill their executive presence that I do not want you to make. And this particular mistake, oftentimes it's not talked about. You can look online, you can look on YouTube, you can look on other platforms, and this mistake is not talked about that often, but you're going to learn about it here because I provide you with over 20 years of experience as a manager, as a C-suite executive, as a director, a public speaker, and an executive coach to help you be able to transform and elevate in your career as a woman in leadership. Now, this video is live, so if you're watching this video now, you're watching the replay. There's typically a point in time where people join the lives, so bear with me. I do like to say hello to everyone who joins and greet them. So just hang in with me for a few moments and we're going to go into the three interview mistakes that will absolutely kill your executive presence, regardless of whichever leadership role you are in. Now, my main focus is working with women in leadership. So if you are a woman in leadership, I'm here to support you on your journey and really help you go to that next level in your career. However, a lot of people in my audience are not women in leadership, and I am so grateful to have you all present also. So if you're not in the women in leadership category, welcome, welcome. I'm glad that you're here today, and I'm here to support you because I know if you're following my channel or subscribe to my channel, you are incredibly, incredibly passionate about being a leader and going to that next level in your career. So I want to say hello to all of you who have joined today. Today is going to be a day where we talk about interviewing and mistakes that you should not make so that you can secure your next employment opportunity. If you are new to me, my name is Dr. Jacinta. I'm glad that you all are here today. Feel free to leave me any questions you have about interviewing. What questions do you have? What questions do you have about interviewing? What are some insights that you need some help with interviewing? Join me and learn from my over 20 years of experience as a C-suite executive, a manager and director, and I've done hundreds of interviews to help you be able to do very well on your next interview. So let me know in the comments below. Let me know where you're joining from. What part of this beautiful world are you joining from right now? Put it in the comments below, and I am looking forward to engaging with you all on this very important live today. So one of the things I mentioned at the very beginning of the live is that there's three mistakes that people make that will kill your executive presence. And executive presence, as I alluded to at the very beginning of the live, it's not something that you only have to have in a boardroom or you have to have in a big meeting or in a conference. Executive presence is something that you are going to need to have in an interview too, because you want to make sure that you're standing out compared to everybody else. So if you have any questions as it relates to interviewing, communicating and interviewing, answering questions, learn from my over 20 years of experience, ask me a question in the comments below and I will make sure I will answer it for you. All right, so let me say hello to the chat. Hello, Miriam. Hi, hello, welcome, welcome. Glad you're here today. Let me know what part of the beautiful world you are joining from and what questions you have about interviewing. And if this information that I share with you is insightful, we'd be happy to have you as a subscriber, and feel free to like the video if you like the content so far. So we talked about executive presence, why you need it in interviewing. So I'm going to go into why this is so important. When hiring managers, because I've been a hiring manager for over 20 years, when we're looking for candidates to hire, we are looking for those individuals who do stand out from other people. These are the people that will help to elevate our organization. So a lot of times people do not start to develop their executive presence when they are in interviewing roles because they think interviewing is just only answering questions and telling about yourself and how amazing you are. Well, what I want to share with you is that there's these 3 mistakes that people make in their interviews that I do not want you to make that will kill your executive presence, and it will also make it not easy for you to secure an employment opportunity. Are you ready? If you have any questions about these or you need some help interviewing wise, let me know in the chat. I'll be able to answer some questions for you. Okay, so the very first mistake that people tend to make that will kill their executive presence in an interview is the most famous mistake of them all. Are you ready for this? And let me know if you've made this mistake before. I want to hear from you and support you. But that mistake, the first mistake we're going to talk about is over-explaining or rambling. Now you might be wondering, well, I just need to tell them, right? You just need to tell them, right? You just need to explain and tell them everything you need to know. Well, yes, you do want to tell your hiring manager certain information that is pertinent to the position you are applying for. However, there's a way that you can go about explaining yourself without sounding like you are over-explaining or that you are just rambling. People do this all the time, and sometimes individuals can do this particular mistake in 1 or 2 scenarios that I've seen. So the first scenario is you have your person that's really nervous. Oftentimes people are nervous when they are in interviews. So let me know in the comments below. Have you ever been nervous in an interview? Have you ever been nervous in an interview? Let me know in the comments below. So sometimes this scenario will happen when people are very nervous in an interview. The second time this will happen is if you have very highly accomplished individuals. So a lot of the people that are in my target audience that are women in leadership, or perhaps that are subscribed to my YouTube channel that are not in the target audience, but they are very elevated leaders, then oftentimes we feel like we have to just share. We have to explain everything that we've done in our previous roles, and we may not necessarily have to say everything that we think we need to say. So how can we fix this? How can you prevent yourself from making this mistake? The first thing that I would recommend for you to do to prevent yourself from over-explaining and from rambling in an interview, this will kill your executive presence, is to speak in a very concise way. And oftentimes people struggle with this. They're not exactly sure what to do. They hear speak in a concise way, shorten your answers and etc. But really, what does that mean? What does this mean? Now, if you want to receive some additional support in terms of going through your answers specifically to make them more condensed, then absolutely let me know in the comments below or reach out to me for an executive strategy session, and I will absolutely help you be able to learn more about being able to be more concise in your responses. But a good rule of thumb is when you're responding to interview questions, try your best to respond to interviewing questions within, I would say, 1 minute and 30 seconds to 2 minutes and 30 seconds. This may sound hard. It may sound challenging. And if you are wondering how in the world you're going to be able to speak everything you need to say in that amount of time, then that's what you reach out to me for. Contact me. I'll be able to give you some insight and some strategies to help you do this. But a good rule of thumb is to make sure that you are speaking for a specified amount of time when you're given an interview response. Because as the hiring manager, we're listening to what you have to say. And as we're listening, but then there comes a point where we stop listening. And I know you may not expect to hear that from someone that has been on the hiring side, but there's a point where we stop listening. If you start to over-explain and you ramble a bit too much, we don't listen as well because we're wondering, okay, well, I have a few more questions I need to ask. I have a meeting I have to go to. We typically are very busy just like you are. And so we want to make sure we're trying to listen, but it limits how much we get to know about you if you talk too much about a certain topic that's not really that important in the interview. So use my suggestions. Try to prepare some answers in advance. So this is something I work with my clients on Defining your stories is incredibly important. I work with my clients on defining their stories so that when they have those interview questions and they come up, then they're automatically ready to talk about this story if this type of question comes up. If that sounds good to you, then contact me for an executive strategy session and we'll talk about it. But that is what I would say is the best way for you to prevent yourself from making this mistake, is to plan your responses in advance or have an idea as to what you want to talk about, and then make sure you are timing yourself in terms of how long you are responding to questions. Now, in an interview setting, you can't actually time yourself, correct? You can't do that. However, if you practice saying a response, you will start to build your own internal clock that will show you and let you know what? You're probably talking just about right, or you may be talking too long. This is something that I talk about in a lot more detail in The Real Executive Woman, especially when we talk about executive communication. This system I'm telling you right now is not only for when you are interviewing, it's for other responses too. I'll go more in detail on that. If you want me to, just let me know in the comments below. But that's the first mistake that people make. The second mistake that people make in their interviews that will kill their executive presence is to become a bit too lax in the interview. How many of you have ever been in an interview where you went in the interview was great, like you had a great conversation and it was great, you were laughing, the interviewer was laughing, but then when it comes down to the offer, you do not hear back from them? Has that happened to any of you before? And there's a lot of my clients that I have worked with in the past that have told me this exact scenario. They have went into interview has went very well, and for some reason, something happened where they didn't receive the employment opportunity, and they leave the interviews feeling very frustrated, not sure why or what happened when they felt like the conversation went very well. Let me explain to you why this is a problem. Ultimately, you are still in an interview. You're still in an interview setting. And there's times where you need to establish that rapport, and you always need to be your authentic self in an interview. Don't be someone that you are not, or do not portray yourself as someone that you're not. You still want to be your authentic self. However, it's an interview still. So if there's topics or there's situations that are triggers for you, that will trigger you either to become very emotional, or that may trigger you to want to ask more or trigger you to talk a lot, then these are the situations that you want to plan for in advance so that you are not triggered as much. So let me give you an example for me personally. If I was in an interview setting and someone asked me a question about something random as it relates to public speaking, I see you're a public speaker and they ask me questions about it, I could talk about public speaking all day. I really could, literally, all day long until my voice got tired. However, I can't talk about public speaking all day in an interview. I can't do that. This is still an interview setting. Even though this is a passion of mine and something I'm incredibly passionate about, I still have to keep a reminder in my mind that this is still an interview. So this happens a lot. Now, let's say if someone asked me a question about cars. For those of you who don't know, I like cars. And if they ask me a question about cars, could I talk about cars all day? Probably not all day, but I could talk about it for a little while. Now, if I know this is a topic that I will speak about in a lot of detail, then I may not want to talk about it in an interview setting. So I encourage you to take a few moments to think about, what are your triggers? What are the topics that you could talk about all day long? And get those topics in your mind. So if something comes up, or if something related to your interview where it digresses sometimes, because sometimes with interviews, they may go to different directions, right? Sometimes they'll end up going, you're talking about one thing in your interview and then it goes into something personal and then something else. So just make sure that you know what your triggers are and that you limit the amount of time you spend on them, and use the rule I mentioned a moment ago about being more concise in terms of the first mistake that people make. Try to time yourself in terms of how long you're responding to those type of interview questions, because the manager wants to see that leader. They want to see the person that they are trusting with a project. If they wanted to talk to a friend of theirs, or colleague, then they would have that very casual conversation. And I know it's hard because there's like this balance in the interview setting where you want to be yourself, but you want to still interview. And sometimes, depending on the hiring manager, maybe they're not on your level and maybe they want to ask more personal questions. Just make sure they're not illegal questions that they don't need to ask. But sometimes they may ask more personal questions or topics that are a bit more lax, and they may come across as very overly cordial, or it may laugh a little bit. And you may take that cue as, oh, I can just let my hair down too, and I can just talk to you because you're talking to me about this. One of the ways that you can present yourself as an executive and maintain your executive presence and to fix this particular issue, this mistake, is to respond the same way regardless of what is discussed with you. So if someone talks to you about, let's say, something that might not be completely appropriate. Let's say they say, oh, wow, I really just like your eye makeup. Oh, it looks gorgeous. It looks nice. Or I like the shoes you have on. Or I love this. I love that. Those are nice compliments. You could say, okay, you could say, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. I'm really excited about learning more about this position and some of the major and amazing work you're doing in your organization, and take the conversation from there. So you basically need to redirect the conversation back to something that's more appropriate. Even if you are the interviewee, sometimes we as the interviewee feel like we do not have the control of the conversation. But I want to challenge you all to think differently about your interviews. If you are subscribed to my channel, you are following my content, or you are following me on any of the social media platforms that I have accounts on right now, you should know by now that I want you to communicate at that very high level, even sometimes higher than the people you are reporting to. That's my mission here on this earth, is to help you all communicate at that higher level than your peers. And you will be able to present yourself as an executive, as that leader, by how you are interacting with other people. And you set the tone for not only the interview, you set the tone for the salary negotiation, you also set the tone for when you start working at the job. Many people make this mistake is because they feel like, oh, I'm interviewing for a job. I really want this job, and I'll just laugh and just be very cordial with them. And they feel like they can't redirect. I encourage you to redirect if you need to, because oftentimes, majority of the times when someone is having that very overly cordial conversation with you in an interview setting where people start getting lax, you start getting lax and are not being as focused in your responses, then the interview does not go as well as you thought it would, or you do not get the job offer and you're sitting there wondering why, like what happened. So the best way to control it is to control how you are responding and limit what it is that you talk about. Know your triggers, what it is specifically that you could talk about or that might cause you to digress in your conversation. Now, to give you another example of this, let's say if you have a scenario that comes up and you don't know that this is something that triggers you, still think in your mind, how can I present myself as an executive in this interview? And be that best version of yourself. Get that best version of yourself in your mind and start thinking of, what can I say? How can I redirect this conversation to where it is very, very focused, very formal in terms of the response, so I'm presenting myself as an executive. You still want to be yourself. You still want to always present your authentic self and use humor as you need to, but still remember, even as professionals and as peers, we can sometimes just let our hair down and just talk about random things. This is still an interview. So keep this in mind. Don't make this mistake, because this interview mistake will kill your executive presence, and it will impact you during your salary negotiations, and it will impact you when you're starting a new job. If this information has been helpful to you so far, feel free to like this video. Let me know, are you learning some additional insights here? These are topics and mistakes oftentimes people don't really think about as it relates to being in a interview type setting. And I want to share with you real strategies, real techniques that will actually help you on your journey. If you like this information, I want to share another resource with you. I have a masterclass. It is in the description below. It is a Ace Your Interview masterclass. It is a fantastic masterclass where we talk about some of those basic strategies that come into interviewing. It is at a special promotion for a very limited time, and I've received a lot of reviews on it that it is a really good masterclass. I've actually had some of my clients that I've worked with in interview preparation settings, and we work in a one-on-one session, that have actually been able to participate in the masterclass, and they gave me insight in terms of how great the masterclass was. So it's a great opportunity for you to dive deeper. I know there's only but so much I can do with you here on YouTube and being live, and of course being present with you and other platforms. But if you really want to get a bit more support, then try the masterclass out. It's going to be great. You'll have at least a good foundation in terms of how you want to prepare yourself for an interview. And if you're at the point where you want to dig and dive in a bit deeper, you know you need some additional support as it relates to concise communication, perhaps in interviews, perhaps in board meetings, perhaps with stakeholders, or in the leadership role that you are right now, then let me know. Contact me at Dr. Jacinta Lamantai on LinkedIn or at Excite Excellence on Instagram, and just reach out to me for an executive strategy session, and we'll talk a bit more about your specific situation. Now, the third and final mistake that I do not want you all to make that will kill your executive presence in an interview is to be that person that talks like the doer, not the leader. Now, I mentioned to you at the very beginning of this live that this was the third and most important mistake that people make in an interview setting that kills their executive presence. So you might be wondering, what does it mean for me to talk like the doer and not the leader? I don't understand. What it means specifically is to speak as if you are the person that is the worker, that is just doing the task. You completed this task, you completed that task. Oh, you worked on this software, you worked on that software. All of those items and topics I just mentioned to you are very helpful in an interview setting. However, you are watching this video because you want to do very well in your interview, correct? So I'm going to share with you what you... Okay, so I'm sorry about that. My video went out again. I'm not sure what happened, but this happens on my live sometimes. I don't know why. So nonetheless, I want me to say hello to the individuals in the chat, and then I will say, continue with my third mistake. So hello, let's see, 1, 2, 3, hello. I am from the United States. Let me know in the comments below where you're from, and feel free to let me know if you have any questions specifically as it relates to interviewing. I am wrapping up. This is my third mistake that people make in an interview setting that will kill their executive presence, and that is to talk like the doer, not the leader. So I'm going to go back into that because my audio went out, and so I want to make sure you all have the opportunity to really think about what I'm sharing with you as it relates to interviewing. As I mentioned when I was explaining what the doers do, the doers are the people that are that are just working, that are workers. They are working on software applications. They are completing tasks. They are taking care of different aspects of projects. But if you're trying to develop your executive presence, then I want you to respond to your questions in the format and in the mindset of a leader. How do you do this? How do you speak like a leader in an interview setting? The best way for you to speak like a leader in an interview setting is to make sure you're talking about your accomplishments, but talk about them in the big scheme of the project. So for instance, you may want to say, I was able to decrease the collections by 25% in the organization while I was managing a $1 million or $3 million budget during that time. In order for you to accomplish those type of milestones in your career, you have to be a leader, not the doer. You have to be a leader. Another example of this is how you are showcasing your expertise or you're showcasing your experiences. Everything that you talk about as a leader should be directly related to the fact of what you have done to make an organization better. People that are just doing the normal task, doers, they're not thinking of answering a question in this way. They're just going to talk about the skills they have, what they've done, and the softwares they've used, and etc. But if you can rephrase your responses in the term of being a leader, then you'll talk about how you were able to impact an organization on the grand scheme. And that showcases you as being a leader. So the next time you have an interview, think about your experiences, think about your stories, think about your expertise, think about those very big and impactful projects or initiatives or goals that you have accomplished within your organization or in your own personal business or whatever the case may be, and put them in the perspective of how you were able to lead the organization, how you were able to lead your team to reach this particular goal. Talk about your team management. Talk about your project management, allocating resources, delegating tasks. Talk in those specific type terms. This, I guarantee you, will position you as a leader. And if you have been wondering, well, how can I do this? Like, how can I phrase those responses and look at my accomplishments and put them in that way? Then that's what I'm here to support you with. Let me know. Contact me for an executive strategy session. We'll talk about it. But this is really great insight in terms of how you can position yourself as a leader. Now, in this video, I've shared with you 3 mistakes that people make in the interview that will kill your executive presence. And I'll go over them for those of you who have joined. I appreciate you being here today. The first mistake is to over-explain or ramble during your responses. Make sure that you watch the replay so you understand exactly what that means and how you can correct it. The second is to be the person that becomes a bit too lax in the interview. This happens a lot of times in professional settings because we're talking to peers oftentimes, and we may go into conversations that are maybe not as appropriate as they need to be. But remember, this is an interview, so keep your responses as such. And the third and final mistake that people make that will kill your executive presence in an interview is to speak in terms of being the doer, not the leader. I talked a bit more about this in detail, so definitely watch the replay and get a grasp of what I mean specifically about that, because you want to showcase yourself as a leader. When you are doing these type of conversations, you want to avoid the mistakes that I mentioned because they will cost you significantly. They will cost you your salary negotiation. They will cost you being extended an opportunity of employment. And they will also cost you in terms of how you are perceived when you decide to start a new employment opportunity. It is literally a domino effect. So you want to make sure you avoid these 3 mistakes that I shared with you so that you position yourself as that candidate of choice that has an executive presence that can lead this organization to that next level, which is what they are looking for. Now, I've shared with you a lot of information here. If you have enjoyed this information so far, feel free to like this video. It does go out to other people with a like, so I appreciate you all doing that in advance. And then also, feel free to subscribe. If this information has been helpful to you, and you learned a lot of information and you felt like, wow, this was very helpful, I didn't think of it that way, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to support you on your journey. Feel free to be able to just subscribe to the channel and hit the notification icon so you are updated whenever I go live or post videos or post different types of community posts. I do go live here on the channel relatively consistently, and I provide as much value as I can. I will say I do have a couple of polls on my platforms right now. Feel free to vote on them this week, because what you all tell me in the polls is what I decide to talk about as it relates to topics during the lives. Now, I know this is a short week, so the 4th of July here in the US is on Friday, and I may not be doing a live on Friday, but I'm not sure just yet. But nonetheless, I still want to be able to provide you with some value. So I'm going to take a look at the poll responses to see what topics you all want to talk about. And then I'll plan to discuss those with you in as much detail as I can on Thursday and Wednesday and Thursday. So let me know if you have any topics that you want to learn more about that maybe are not on the polls, or something that you're just curious to know more about as a woman in leadership, or as a person that is trying to elevate their leadership journey and you're not in the category of women in leadership. Then let me know in the comments below. I'd be happy to record a video for you and give you some insights in terms of how you can communicate at a higher level than your peers as an amazing leader. Don't forget to take a look at the description. There is a very exciting Ace Your Next Interview Masterclass link listed in the description below. It is at a special promotion only for a very limited time. So you definitely want to take a look at that and gain some even more support and additional insight in terms of how to prepare for your next interview. Until our next meeting, leaders, I hope you all have an amazing day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.